He scrambled to his knees and cried out in pain and disbelief. The fire was gone. There was no ring of children, nor any mark upon the snow where they had been. There were no villagers. The houses lay cold and broken along the empty street. Snow sifted through sagging doors, and the wind moaned in sightless windows, stirring here and there a rag of ancient curtain. He knelt there in the snow and wept for the pretty phantoms of the dance, his tears becoming ice upon his cheek. And when at last the crying stopped so that he could see again, he saw before him a great black hole in the place where the fiddlers had been. A well, a deep, deep well, with smooth sides and black, icy water far down in the bottom of it. And he knew that if his turn had come to dance, then that black water would have closed forever over his head. He got to his feet, shuddering, backing away from the well. Was it possible? They had been so beautiful. They had befriended him and made him one of them. Would they have led him to the brink of the well? Would they have let him fall? He stood there, forlorn in the broken village. The wind blew round him, and there was laughter in it, and he knew. He turned and ran along the silent street that had no footprint on it but his own, past the last house and out onto the moon-washed slope. His feet sank into the snow, and his lungs were bursting. But he did not stop until he topped the slope and plunged deep among the black pines. There he found a snowdrift burrowed into it and cried softly till sleep came. He set out the next morning, weary and sad. He felt even more lonely than before. It seemed to him that he had no friend in the world. There were only enemies out here in the wilderness. His bread was almost gone. There was one piece left, but he dared not eat it, for he did not know how much further he had to go. He had not walked far when, turning to look back, he saw something moving, far away between the snow-laden trees. At first, it looked like a whirl of snow, crystals whipped by the wind, but as it came closer, he saw that it was an old woman in a grey sparkling shawl which flapped about her as she came. He waited. The old woman came slowly, bending down now and then to pick something from the snow. When she came near, she straightened up, gazing at Ivan. Strands of her hair whipped across her face like sleet, but she was smiling. Ivan took off his mitten, put his hand into his pocket, and pulled out a crust of bread. He held it out to her. "Old woman," he said, "it is cold, and you must be very far from your home. Share my bread. It will warm you a little, perhaps." The old woman shook her head. "You are kind," she said gently, "but I do not need your bread." Ivan did not understand. "Old woman," he said, "what did you do when it was night and the wind howled like a hungry wolf?" The old woman smiled. "You are a good boy to take care about an old woman like me, but I am not an old woman always. Sometimes I am an icicle, or a bear, or a spruce tree. Sometimes I am a twist of wind-blown snow, colder than the night." Her eyes twinkled at him. "One night," she said, "I was a snowy owl." Ivan stared, remembering how he had been lost and freezing in the night. "Were you," he said, "the owl who showed me the way, and the bear who drove off the wolves, and the little fir tree in the crack?" The old woman smiled. "It may well be so," she said, "for lovers find small miracles no matter what men say. and no one ever loved better than you love your brother." "How do you know of this?" cried Ivan. "And what do you pick from the snow?" The old woman held out her hand to him. Pips of ice lay like diamonds in her palm. "These are the tears that you cried for your brother," she said. "I have followed you gathering them from the snow because you will need them soon." Ivan frowned. "What would I do with tears?" he said. "Why will I need them soon?" "To soften Starik's heart," replied the old woman. "Here, take them." And she tipped the icy pips into Ivan's hand. Ivan gazed at them. "I do not understand," he said. "What am I to do with these tears?" The old woman became grave. "At the moment of your greatest danger," she said, "you must fling the tears into Starik's face and say, 'Brothers nevermore shall part. Melt the winter in his heart.'" Ivan said the words softly to himself so that he would remember, and the old woman nodded. "That's right," she said, "and now go, for I can help you no more." When he had gone a little way, Ivan turned to wave farewell, but there was only a little spruce tree that quivered in the wind. He turned and walked on, and after a long time he came to a mountain. It was a hard, white mountain, and as he drew near, the air grew colder still. At the foot of the mountain was a great high cave, with the wind booming in its mouth. Ivan shuddered, because he knew that he had come at last to Starik's land. Inside the cave, it was utterly black. The roar of the wind was deafening, and it was deadly cold. Ivan stopped. The darkness filled him with dread. He looked back to where the grey light spilled a little way into the entrance. He could go no farther. Must get outside, where he could see the sky and the snow and the trees. But his brother must have passed this way. Somewhere in this terrible place, the little boy was waiting for Ivan to come and take him home. He set his lips in a thin, firm line and moved on into the blackness, holding out his arms before him and going very slowly. The wind howled in his ears, and he heard again the laughing voice in it. Something fluttered in his face. He struck at it with his hand, and it slid up over his forehead and became tangled in his parka, dragging the hood from his head. At once something else hit him, flapping coldly in his hair. Ivan cried out, clawing at the thing from his head. It sank needle teeth into his finger and whirled away on the wind. Another one, this time on his chest. He threw up his arms to protect his face. Whatever the things were, they were all around him. He felt the small collisions, felt them cling, fluttering to his clothing. He screamed, but the wind drowned the cry. He whirled round and round, beating at himself to knock them off, and for every one he brushed away, there was another one to take its place. He knew that it was hopeless. He put his head down, wrapped his arms around it, and went through them. And after a time, the collisions stopped. For a long time, Ivan moved onward, through the cold darkness. The sound of the wind began to fade, and when he looked back, he could no longer see the light. As he walked, he noticed that the tunnel was becoming higher and wider, and he seemed to be moving towards a lighted place. Presently he stopped, listening intently. Somewhere in front of him he heard a laugh. It was not a pleasant laugh, like the laugh of someone who is enjoying a good joke. It was a cold, flat laugh, and when it came again, Ivan found himself thinking about the laughter he had heard in the wind last night when he was lost and freezing. As he moved on, the laughter grew louder, and he could hear other sounds too, a swishing noise, and now and then a thin, high scream. The tunnel, which by now was wide and very high, took a sudden turn. The sound seemed to be coming from just beyond the turn. Ivan flattened himself against the wall, peered cautiously round, and almost cried out.